I'm Nick Geraci with InVen Global, and I'm here with CLG Head Coach Weldon Green. You guys always seem to, no matter what the form of the team is, you guys seem to deliver these good matchups against Cloud9, but today was exceptionally special. Not only are you guys just on a tear right now, but that was a very one-sided victory. Can you kind of talk about I really liked your draft phase, but can you kind of talk about what the team was trying to accomplish, like what your win condition was, and do you feel like they just gave it to you guys, or like, did you expect to win that one-sidedly with how the draft went?
Well, C9 is undefeated on blue side, so we had side selection going into this match, and we thought, like, obviously we have really strong solo laners, and it's really good to give them the counter pick, but it seems like Reaper and C9 have figured out blue side picks. You know, they have some way of like making some crazy combo that pulls off. So we thought, at the very least, we have to try to play that side, and then it was just up to C9. They had 3 power picks they have to ban. Karma, Yumi, and Sona, and they chose to leave one up, and so we have to punish it. You know, we have to be able to pick it, and we have to be able to play it, and I think that we were basically in the driver's seat in that game, and it was up to us to lose it after they gave us that power pick. So, yeah, I think I'm proud of the guys. We obviously prepared for that scenario. We knew that teams are going to leave power picks up against us, and we're going to have to prove that they can't.
This is such a big win for you guys too. Not only are we pretty late in the season, but Cloud9 was second, now third. Now you guys are tied. You're in second place, which is really, really great to see. I mean, this is such an interesting turnaround for CLG. You guys look great, and really the only thing that really changed from one split to the other was a single player, right? So obviously there's more to it than that. So I'd like to hear from the coach himself. Like, what do you think? I don't know if it's what Ruin adds to the team or what these group of players, these 5 players, kind of their identity seems completely different from the last team, despite 80% of the roster being exactly the same.
Right, so I think 4 really big things changed. So even though it looks like one thing, right, it's actually 4 things. The first thing that changed, obviously, was Darshan's gone, and so his leadership and the way that he led the team and his voice is absent. So he had a lot of good points. He had a lot of negative points, or he had a couple of negative points. Not a lot. He's a really good player. But obviously that leaves a hole, right? So then other people have to start stepping up, filling responsibilities, so that changes things. Second thing that happened is Ruin came in, and he has his own voice, and he was coming off of Worlds, so when he joined the team, he was really at peak in terms of his year, right? He'd been scoring Worlds teams. They were on the top of the meta. He was on top of his macro. He knew exactly what he wanted. So he came in with a really strong voice, but like a quiet, confident one. And because he's played in Europe and he's played in a lot of English teams, he's really easily able to shot call in game, and he's able to say in the VOD review what he wants. And he has a shirt that says like "Speak up" or "Shut up," I think, or like "Never be silent." So like that's kind of his mantra: is if something's bothering him, he'll say it. He won't bury it in.
That's great.
And I think that gives us a good like avenue into like how it is that he wants to play the game. And then obviously he has a tattoo that says "Always be confident." So
yeah, we talked to him about that. It's awesome.
He can lose, he can die like 17 times in lane and still carry. So that's, good for him. So those 2 things happen. And then I think the other really big things that happened are we went to the Korean boot camp. And I think you saw that, like, in Korea, the way that they jungle and the way they play the map is insane. And we learned so much scrimming against the Korean teams. Even the lower tier ones that scrimmed us were just, like, outclassing us and teaching us so much. And I think that we took all of that knowledge and really gelled with it. And Wrigley is an experiential learner. He learns best by experience. So when he was over there being a punching bag for the Korean junglers, like, he picked it all up. It's kind of like that anime character that gets like beat up and he learns all of the moves that were used against him, and then he gets to use them again. So I really felt like that's kind of what happened there. And then of course we had our first change with Ray on the team. So every single time you come in as a new member, you're the new member until the next person changes. Then you're not the new member anymore. And so Ray's not the new member anymore, right? Like Ruin is. So then his voice got stronger, and he's able to do more what he wants and say like, no, I don't want to do that. And so his leadership is blossoming as well. So I think those are the 4 biggest things that happened that kind of show what's going on with the team.
That's an absolutely phenomenal breakdown. Actually, I wanted to touch on a couple of those points. One being, like you said, Wiggly learning through experience at the Korean boot camp. When he debuted in Week 9 last year, he's playing Graves, 1v9ing the game, and then in spring he seems to be playing more selfless, but seems to be a little bit lost, a little bit pulled in between too many directions. And now it's kind of like he struck the balance between understanding how to play for himself while still being able to cater to what the team needs. Is there anything from a coaching perspective that you feel was integral in kind of his spring to summer transformation, like that happened during the boot camp, or anything specific that you can point to?
Yeah, well, so first of all, I want to clarify that I don't think that junglers like play for themselves or play for the team. I think that they either have like the right strategy or the wrong strategy. So there's like a clear win condition for the team, and the jungler has to play towards that. And I think that Ray is really good at just general strategy of League of Legends now, especially after having so much of it exposed to us, like through the Korean boot camp. He knows like, oh, if enemy jungler does this, they should lose the game, right? Simple one is yesterday when FlyQuest ganked top and we just got a free Drake. That should be like the end of the game, right? So we know that like, okay, if the jungler's dumb enough to gank top and hopefully they get a kill on their, they're thinking like, hopefully I get a kill because I'm giving away, the Drake. And so I think that Ray just learned like when he was in Korea and he ganked top and then the Korean jungler just took the dragon for free, he was like, oh, okay, I can't do that, right? So like in NA, when you scrim and you gank top and the enemy team doesn't really punish it, it's like you don't learn that, right? So I think that he just learned strategy at a much more punishing level, and then now when like his strategic knowledge, I think is just really really high.
And in bringing Ruin to the team, when people saw that after Fenerbahce was eliminated from MSI and Kire and Ruin left to go towards new teams, and Ruin was signed by CLG, people were like, oh, this guy had like carried a ton of games by himself and is a great individual player in his own right. But the thing that's been impressive to me the most about how he's played is that he's been so self-sufficient. If he's getting ganks, he's able to capitalize on them. If he's left alone the entire time, he's able to be extremely durable and allow Wiggly to go to mid lane, bot lane, wherever else he needs to be, and not really have to worry about always catering to the top lane. Like, even Ruin said that it wasn't like how he that's kind of how he kind of adjusted. Was that more of like do you think like a team identity thing, or do you think like Ruin kind of saw, he said that the top lane LCS competition was a lot more, intense than in TCL? Like, so do you think that was just kind of him adjusting individually, or was that something that the team talked about? Because he's been so good at soaking pressure for you guys, in addition to, playing good individual games and stuff like Jace as well.
I think it's more like, I think it's actually just on NA junglers, just as a whole. I think that Wiggly strives to be in the right place. And against Korean teams, a lot of times, what we would see is just the top laners like almost solo the entire game, like duking it out. Because the moment that an enemy jungler would show there, the other team would get too much on the other side of the map, except for specific timings.
Okay.
So the way that we see it, like we're in the right place, and then they're just randomly ganking top. And we're like, okay, well, I guess, sorry, you have to die, but we're going to win the game. And he's like, yeah, I guess. So my stats suck, but if they want to be so dumb about their strategy, then, like, that's the way it is. Now, obviously, there are timings that, like, he can be backing off and, like, not dying. There's a lot of argument to, like, when he should be soaking the XP and dying versus when he should be backing off and giving it, and a lot of that just like a balance between the team. But I think in general, a lot of his deaths on stage kind of run in that gamut where the enemy team doesn't really have a play to make necessarily because our bot lane's playing so well and our mid lane's playing so well. Like Power of Evil, I think the entire first season when we were losing scrim after scrim after scrim after scrim last spring, I could still count on my hand the number of times in a week he would die to a gank. He's just really good at towing that line. So I think that it's just like Ruin kind of playing how the game should be played, and if they are punishing it, we should be able to do something on the other side of the map to punish their investment on the top side. And if we stop being able to do that, like if we stop playing so hard on the other side that we get the advantage, then it's going to look really bad, right? Because he's going to die and we're not going to punish. So I think we'll be on the lookout for that. And also I think as we get into playoffs, it's always dependent on the meta. If it's like a camp top meta with a bunch of split pushers, or depending on your draft, maybe you have a super split pusher and you just got to camp chain gank them and that's your win condition, so that's fine. It's just not really a style for general play right now.
That actually leads perfectly to my next question, which is, we're 4 games away from playoffs. You guys aren't locked in yet, but, sitting tied for second place, that's a good place to be right now with 4 games left to play, right? But like you said, the meta change can have such an effect on playoffs. Like, not only are you changing formats, but new things can come out. Like, and if you show up wrong on the day, you have the wrong read on things. Like in the quarterfinals, and you're out. That's it, right? So, what as a coach, like, does that make it? That has to make it more difficult to prepare, right? And you've been here enough times now. Like, is there anything that you really kind of try to focus on in like the couple of weeks leading up to playoffs with your team, knowing that everything could change very drastically? like, how does that affect how you, like, impart wisdom to the team and help the team sort of prepare and hone their skills ahead of playoffs?
Yeah. So it's really important when you go into best of series and playoffs that you have to be able to snowball. You can't just like pick scaling and just like pray every single game. And so every team from the beginning of the split onward, I feel like, is always training how to properly play the game without making mistakes and snowball leads. Get early leads and snowball leads. And then usually on stage, sometimes you'll end up with a scaling draft just because the enemy team will give it to you and you're like, hey, I can get lane prio and scaling. Cool, and you got to win best of one, so you just pick the best champion at the time.
Sure.
But everybody's training for that purpose, right? To be the strongest team at the fundamentals in the early game and the late game decision making. But then I think the other big part of, besides practicing and being able to snowball, the other big part of going into playoffs is having draft flexibility, which means you can't have anything that your team has to ban on both sides, that you can't play. And that's a really scary thing. You have to be able to prove and show that you can, if somebody leaves an OP pickup against you, you can pick it and play it. Because if you can't, then you end up going into a best of 5 and you have a locked ban on both sides as the game switches over back and forth. And that's a huge hindrance. I've noticed in my past teams that has been a massive hindrance to our draft strategy in best of 5s. And so Irene and I's goal is to like have no picks that we're forced to ban essentially on both sides of the draft. And that means, working on champion pools, working on how we play around these combos, just making sure that we're like flexible and we're on meta.
CLG has now, you guys are in a good position. You guys have definitely, like, at least returned to form. I mean, people were like, oh, hot start, but now, like, like I said, we're 14 games into the season. Like, you guys are clearly a good team who's here, And after the team's missed playoffs, 3 splits in a row, it's probably so nice to see them, competing at such a high level. Is there anything that you want to say to the CLG fan base now that you guys have really turned things around and started looking great?
Oh, gosh. Thanks for sticking around. That was a long drought, I guess. Like, I don't know how you did it because I personally left. I was like, like TSM fan now, G2 fan now. But I'm back, so kudos to me for seeing the light coming back, and kudos to you guys who stuck around. So thanks for toughing it out, and you had a much harder journey than I am, and so I tip my hat to you.
Keep the faith. CLG has 4 games left in the regular season.